the opening of the lottery. We already have close to 1,000 people participating. So the results as of Friday, November 4th, we had 495 applicants for the STEM Academy and 388 applicants for the Global Studies. The lottery closes on November 15th. Certainly we'll have an update then. We're hoping to get letters out in early December for the families who have been awarded a seat, and then also have those wait list letters available for families in December as well. So things are moving forward, and I'm happy to see that our families remain excited about applying to West Side Middle School. So that is, and last but not least, in terms of lotteries, AIS will open on January 3rd, 2023. That lottery closes on January 18th. We will provide some more opportunities for the board and the public as we get closer to that date. Our next goals and update is connected to Goal 1, College and Career Readiness for All Students. We provided it as part of our Friday packet for the board and the community, and really this is a follow-up to the board presentation on kind of the summative data presentation, kind of the state of the district from last week. Our chief of schools, 2 positions that are supporting and supervising principals district-wide. So for us, we see this work as the next step. And I thought it would be appropriate to introduce the 2 chief of schools to you this evening. We do a lot of work in our respective offices around looking at data at all of our schools, kind of assessing where we are as a district. And these 2 fine people have been charged with helping to improve principal practice, which will improve teacher teacher practice across the district. Ultimately, we want to improve, of course, student outcomes. And so they will speak to some of the research behind principal leadership, and furthermore speak to kind of their practices with principals to help move the district forward. So, Mr. Chris Roach and Dr. Anna Rocco, welcome to the board meeting, and we are ready for you.
Good evening. Thank you for having us today as we discuss some of the work we're doing as the Chiefs of Schools. My name is Christopher Roach, Chief of Schools, K-8. For Anna Rocco next to me, who handles K-5, some of our schools.
So I just handed out another packet for the slideshow because although everything is the same, we did change the order. So if you had looked at the previous one that was in the board packet, we just changed the order of some of the slides to make it flow a little bit better in our conversation.
We'll get started in just a moment. First and foremost, again, thank you for having us. When I talk about the important work that is school improvement, we're going to get this screen up here in 1 second. So just to talk about some of the work, you'll see a quote on page 1 or page 2 that the school principals account for 25% of the school-based impact on student achievement, second only to classroom teachers at 75%. So if you think about how profound the impact and how the enormous responsibility and lift that a principal has as they help elevate practice in their school and the school improvement process. So I think it's still, how's that? Yep. All right, we'll take a look at that side next. So talk about principal leadership matters, and in your packet, we're on the principal leadership matters slide. Thank you. Look at the Wallace Foundation, research think tank. They talk about shaping the vision of academic success. So we talk about principals in the realm of, you've got about 36 million things happening during the course of the day, and you've got to prioritize instructional leadership to affect positive change that we're going to affect on these systems at scale. Creating a climate hospitable to education, cultivating leadership in others. So the notion of leadership, both by example and leadership capacity, building our leadership in other school leaders. Improving instruction. So this is really the why. And the why behind these positions, chiefs of schools, is that when we invest in principal practice, principal professional development, we directly impact teacher practice and ultimately student outcomes, which is what we're going to talk a bit about today. But the whole notion of this presentation is that leadership matters. principals matter, and in order to be an effective change agent, we've got to move the needle, which is what we're going to do this year. Slide 2. Yeah, can you click that? Yeah, that's too small. All right, so we're going to talk about the science of school improvement. So like anything else, improvement strategies, improvement science presupposes that there are ways to improve with respect to moving student performance forward. It's really important. It's difficult to see on the screen right now, but we've dissected the accountability system. It's a holistic, balanced scorecard for accountability for the state of Connecticut, and it's a very fair measure of student performance. I say this because it provides, if you look at the screen above, Mrs. Gillespie used to enjoy this when I did this at the PTO meetings. If you look at the slide above, we're showing that at the elementary level, 42% of the accountability index is determined by growth. What I mean by growth is every student has a target. You recall I watched the board meeting last year, Carolyn's represented on targets, right? And we talked about the notion of crossing the finish line, right? Every student has a target. If every student reaches their target, we're at 100%, both on growth rate, but also the average percent of the target achieved. So when we look at that 42%, we're saying students are growing, and it's almost half the accountability system. Similarly, at the middle school, it's approximately 40% growth. So you have a system predicated on growth. Our job is to get every student closer to that growth target. So you could run a 26-mile marathon. If I finish 26 miles, get 100%. If I finish 25, I've got points proportional to that 26 miles. So in doing so, many of our schools currently are in the quadrant that says lower achievement, but very high progress. All right, so our job, fundamentally everybody's job in the school district, is to improve practice, right? So getting principals into professional learning communities to really dive into student level data, system level data, and data across all subgroups. The other thing that you'll notice about this accountability index, at least in your packets, is high need students count twice in the data. What high need students, how do we define that? That's ELL students, special education students with special needs, as well as free and reduced lunch. So when we talk about closing the achievement gap, number one, we need to know that one exists. Second, we need to know all of the students in our system and how are we going to move the needle for all students, which is a moral imperative. We want all students to grow, we want all students to be proficient. So the way that we do this is to really study the data, really break it down to segregate by both subgroup, by subject, by content area, by grade level. We meet with principals, we meet with coaches, we meet with all district leadership in an effort to impact positive change. I'll stop talking for a moment. But ultimately, there are strategies to get better, and we need to examine continuous models of success. There are schools in this district that every year continue to thrive. We're studying them. There are schools in other districts that continue to thrive. We are studying them and bringing some of those practices back in our professional learning communities. So, Dr. Rocco, you want to talk about the positions?
So in comes the role of the chiefs. And we're very excited to be in these roles. Chris and I have been in the district for a while. I've been a little bit longer than Chris has, but we've both come recently out of principals' roles, so we're very connected to the work of the principals, and we understand those roles very intimately. So in our next slide, and in your packet, you see the roles of chiefs, and we've listed many things there, so those really come out of the job description. And then there's those other jobs, other duties as assigned that get added in periodically. So part of our role also, in addition to these things that you see listed on the slide, are outreach to parents. If parents have concerns that can't be resolved at the building level, they generally will come to us for the K-8 level. We also co-chair the PDEC committee, and we oversee summer school in addition to the responsibilities that you see listed here. But the heart of our work, which lies on the next slide, is the things that come under the strategic operating plan and the superintendent's goals. So you'll see two things listed there, and everything that really is on the first sheet in that very long list lives under these two areas that are focused on in the strategic operating plan and Mr. Walston's goals. So I just want to talk you through a little bit about what this actually looks like in practice. We are in schools every week, and we are in all of our schools every week, and we're talking with every one of our principals every week. That's something that is really critical to our work and very important to both of us as well as to Mr. Ralston. That was one of his priorities. I want people on the ground. I want people to know what's happening in our schools. And I want to be able to hear from the people who are there every single day what's going on in our buildings and how we can support the work that our principals and our teachers are doing to advance student learning. So when we think about the school improvement planning process, it really is a very extensive process. It starts with principals' analysis of the data, and that informs the school improvement plan. It sounds like it might be simple, but it really is very complex. It's looking at where are students excelling, where do students need to grow further, and what are the instructional practices that influence that growth or need to change in order to develop the growth further in those areas. We work very carefully with the principals, in addition to Carol Wanzer, to look at the data, to look for trends across not only the school, but across the district. We meet with principals regularly. Kara shares the school's data with them, as well as the district's data with them, so they can see where they are in comparison to the district. And they can really hone in on areas where students need support and what instructional strategies can go up against those areas in order to advance student learning. We review the plans with the principal. We provide feedback to those plans on a regular basis. And we really push the principal's thinking around the goals that they've written, the strategies that they've written, and the systems that they have in place to support those goals. It's really important to us that those documents that they've created are working documents. We don't want them to be something that's written at the beginning of the year and then we dust off again a couple times during the year to see where we are in those plans. We want them to be living documents based on data as it comes in. We're looking at data in terms of big data, so you saw a lot about the ESPA data from Karen last week. You also will see DIBELS data at some point in time, which is related to our literacy skills and our literacy growth in students. And we have iReady this year, which we're very excited about at the elementary level, and the second and middle schools also have it for literacy and math. We'll see that data as well, and we'll look at that data. But the other data that we're looking at is the day-to-day data, the student work. We're really grounding a lot of our decisions in student work. And when we engage in the PLC process, that professional learning community process with principals, we're really looking at student work and saying where are students growing, where do they need to grow further, what are we doing in our instructional practices that's helping that and helping students to advance their learning. So we engage in instructional rounds with principals. That means Chris and I take learning walks through their building. We're hoping to engage teachers in those learning walks as well so they can see the instructional practices that are going on in their buildings. But that's really a critical part of our work, to see if this is a focus for a school, if this is a strategy that they've identified as going to be a high leverage practice to move student learning forward. Where are we seeing evidence of it? Where can we really recognize teachers' success in implementing those effective strategies? And where can we bring teachers together to share their successes so that they can share those excellent practices with each other and have opportunities to discuss them? In addition to that, we're looking at, in the SIP plan, when they have identified these practices that they think are high leverage practices which will move student learning forward, what is it that has to happen in the administrator's practice? Where does the administrator feel they want to push themselves and grow their own practice to influence teachers' practice, which we know will impact student learning and advance student learning towards the goals that we have? So we're identifying areas of growth for administrators, just like athletes and doctors and lawyers have coaches that coach them on a regular basis. We want to grow the practices of our administrators as well. So we are also providing opportunities for administrators to come together, to share their school improvement plans, to talk about things that are working in their buildings, to think about common problems of practice within schools, across our schools, and then how are they utilizing resources within their schools? How are their teachers implementing strategies that they're seeing great success with?
And we're trying to provide many opportunities in many ways. So it may be we meet one-on-one with principals to talk about their practices. We might bring small cohorts of principals together to talk about practice, or we may meet with the whole leadership team to talk about things that are going on in their schools that are successful, and also provide opportunities for them to talk with each other about how to grow their practice and how to solve problems in their schools. So we are really excited about our work. We know that from our experience, administrators are pulled in many, many directions over the course of the day. And oftentimes, we get so involved in the daily management pieces that we don't have time to engage in those real professional conversations and keep that instructional leadership first and foremost in their minds and forefront. Our administrators are dealing with lots of things over the course of the day, putting out fires, making sure safety is the #1 priority of all students and staff, and making sure we're keeping academics front and center. Sometimes gets pushed a little bit to the side when you get embedded in all of the other things that happen. So when we are there and we're in schools, it's an opportunity to bring that leadership focus back to the work that they really want to be doing and want to engage in at a high level. So we're really excited about those opportunities that we have. We've talked to many administrators as we go in. The other day someone said, I set aside this 2 hours that you're here every week as the sacred time. So I know during that time that there's nothing that's going to happen except we're going to talk about educational leadership and my leadership practice, and I hold that time as sacred time every week. So it's exciting work that we're doing. We think that it's work that will really push our leaders to grow. We have outstanding leadership in our district. We're really proud of people who are our colleagues and now we're working with closely. And our role is really to continue to elevate the leadership practice so that they can in turn work with their staff and elevate the teacher practice, which then in turn elevates our students' success.
So in your packet, I'm just going to briefly go through this. This is what we call the data-wise process. I promise I'll be 1 minute. So if you were to look at this, we have tons of data, whether it be Smarter Balance, Gibbles, iReady, Lost Links, unit assessments. We take all that data and we want to distill it down to in a meaningful way to principals, to teachers, so that it's actionable. They give you something with the data to move student achievement. So let me give you a hypothetical focus area, math problem solving. Okay. Priority question: how do students approach word problems? Learner-centered problem. Students translate word problems and solve without thinking about the question. So without thinking about what the question may be asking, right? So that's a student learner-centered problem. A teacher problem of practice may be that teachers are asking students to memorize words such as in all, how many more, difference, sort of keywords that may impact the right answer. So then once we know that, we're going to then put an action plan in place. We've got to remedy that. It's a problem of practice. It's a problem of teacher practice. So we've got to look at it through the lens of what do we need to increase, what do we need to decrease, what do we need to stop altogether. So our action plan would be to help students create models to understand what's going on in a word problem so they can conceptualize it and act on it and make sense of the word problem, but also solve it. And then plan to assess using short-term, long-term goals, looking at specifically how do we remedy that issue so that we can concurrently improve our checkpoints along the way, our iReady data, our Dibbles data, our Smarter Balance data. We're very data-driven, and we're trying to impart within all schools a data culture so that it becomes the way that we do business around here in all schools. We've looked at data in a way that since I've been here, we have not. All right, we're looking to the student level, we're looking at it with a sense of urgency, the right way so that we move the needle in the right direction. Crucial to that is after we look at the data, we need to act on it, right? Teachers need to have it in their hands, principals need to have it in their hands, we need to get out into those classrooms. So we're there every day in classrooms with principals, asking questions, helping lead, and really helping create the conditions for success in all schools within all classrooms. So I'll leave it at that.
So we have a quote on the last page. Principals are vital for ensuring student success. Their actions help maintain a positive school climate, motivate school staff, and enhance teachers' practice. Therefore, they play a major role in retaining effective teachers and ensuring their success in the classroom. Ultimately, principal leadership has significant implications for students' experiences and accomplishments. So our goal is to provide support to all of our principals, whether that looks like data analysis, problem solving, being a thought partner, or just boosting their morale sometimes. Sometimes we go into a building and the principal says, I just need 15 minutes of your time to just talk for 15 minutes. Go for it. So sometimes we're there to just support them in that moment. But our ultimate goal is to be a strong support for principals so that they can be a strong support to their teachers, which then translates to success for all students. And one of the things that we, very early on when we knew we had these two roles, was that our desire is to be the person that we wish we had when we sat in that principal's seat. So that's really what, when we walk into a building, every time we walk into a building, we try to be the person that we wish we had when we sat in that role.
And also improve outcomes in all areas across the district.
And data, let's say data.
And use it.
So that is it. Do you have any questions?
Good question. So when I was back on the board in April, Kevin took the time to sit me down because I came back and there was a lot of chiefs and a couple more assistant superintendents, and so I kind of got acclimated with what was going on. So thank you for talking about your role. And so who did your job before you guys were hired? The assistant superintendent, right? That was your job before, and then Dr. Glasses before, right?
The assistant superintendent and a director of instruction, 3 years, 18, 19. It was Kara and I who had the responsibility of principal support and supervision. And then year 2 of my tenure here, it was solely my role. And then year 2.5 was a pandemic, so it was year 3. Then year 4 last year with the chiefs here. And then prior to that was Bill, who essentially had Dr. Casimiro's role, plus the supervision of the principals, etc. I don't know what that looked like. I was here.
And then was there, before that, I don't know if you know, maybe Karen know, wasn't Christy Zelita like the charge of the 3 middle schools at one point?
Not for supervision though. So she was a lead principal, so API for instruction for the middle schools.
Okay, so that's.
Oh, you're right. So there
Yeah,
was
she
a
did
complete role
supervise
for
it.
that, and then it had at one point gotten kind of cut down to a lead position.
Yeah, and
So
then it was
her role-
eliminated altogether.
Correct.
Yeah, and Ralph, I'm sorry. Also, my first year here, Dr. Rocco was in a similar API position. I forget the name, the title of that position at that time. And then she ended up being moved to King Street Primary the second year, kind of in the middle of the year, pandemic. And then we were able to move her back to the district office. I forgot to mention that, excuse me.
All right, so no, I'm glad that, we're trying it out and hoping we'll see a return on our investment next year with the data with Kara and stuff like that. But I know you guys have been in this district for a long time. You've seen pretty much everything, so I'm glad you guys are in these roles.
Thank you.
Any other questions from board members?
So I don't know if there are any more questions. I just wanted to say, one, Chris and Anna, thank you. Your presence on the district team has been welcome and appreciated. I feel like it's an opportunity for us to make our work, the work that happens across the street in the curriculum office, come alive, specifically with helping our principals help lift that work and lead that work. I just want to say to the board, we have kind of doubled down and invested in these positions because we feel confidently that the better prepared our principals are, the better our teachers are going to be, and the outcomes and the improvements are going to follow. There's enough research to support that thought. Just going back to one of the points that Chris had made into that slide with the triangle, inverted triangle, and that's that data-wise process that Chris was so happy to present. And we talked about the problem of practice. Like, we are particularly deliberate and intentional about helping principals identify problems and practices in schools. And so the wonderful staff that we just saw in the back that the kids were talking about, it's now sitting with the principal and helping Principal Traffic get ready for his 4th grade team. All of those teachers are together and help us identify the problem of practice hypothetically in the 4th grade. What do we do to improve outcomes for kids in the 4th grade? And then help the teachers unpack the data in ways so they can find out what those problems are, get to the root cause in terms of teacher practice to help improve. It's not about people doing anything wrong, but it's just trying to find the right practices to help improve those outcomes. Sometimes those issues are systemic, and then it may be something that we have to do as a district. It might be scheduling or programming at the school, and so the principal may have to make a shift, or it could be principal practice, but you don't know until you sit down and begin to discuss and help uncover the problems. And so these are the things that Anna and Chris are really intentional about. So I don't know if it was Anna, I think it was Chris, who said the principal has like 36 million things on their plate that they're trying to deal with, and Anna and Chris are trying to get them to focus on student outcomes, teacher practice, instructional leadership, meaning our principals. And again, we've invested in where our big bets are on principal leadership. We can't get to every single teacher in the district, but we can get to every single principal in the district to help improve their practice. And this is the deliberate and intentional practice we've been focusing on. So thank you both.
So I apologize, I just want one last question. So talking about managing principals, so if a principal comes to you with a problem, you guys have the authority to solve that problem? Like, let's say they have an issue with a teacher in their school, or they have they have a safety issue, or they have something like that. So is that because that's that one level of installation kind of from the superintendent?
So very often a principal will call or text at any point in time during the day, and we can talk through a problem and problem solve, and then we'll also reach out to any member of the cabinet and get their opinion on it to cabinet. Reach out to cabinet. But we have Kelly, Kara, Kim, and Kevin are all on speed dial, so if there's something that we can't solve, or we know that the cabinet needs to be informed of something, then it's a constant process of being communication between us and cabinet.
How do you find that mode of communication is with the, I know you have on speed dial, do they pick up?
Yes.
Sometimes they don't. Anyway.
Well, thank you, everyone. We have a great staff in this district, wonderful educators and administrators, and thank you all for your support. Appreciate it.
Chris, Anna, not yet. We have a couple more questions.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, just, do we have a metric in place to show the growth of our principals and administration, or is it just ultimately the growth in our students that will prove that?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking that. So we are in a space right now because we were meeting just this afternoon. I'm pointing to Kara and Kara Watson, who you met last week, really following up with our admin council, all of our administrators, to follow up to the public presentation that you just saw at the last board meeting. Part of that presentation is beginning to talk about next steps, specifically for all of our school leaders. Our school leaders, like we're all supervised, evaluated in this district. And so there was kind of expectations, artifacts as part of their leadership, if you will, that they would be evaluated on at the end of the year. So we haven't talked about what that would look like publicly in terms of practice, but certainly some of the things, certainly one of the expectations, and I was just talking to Kara about this today, like when we meet with our admin council next Tuesday, I want to make sure our last couple of slides concretely talk about next steps for all of the school leaders in the room. And some of those concrete next steps are, I need to be able to say to Anna and Chris, how is principal Y doing relative to these best practice expectations? How's principal X doing relative to these expectations? And so we will be working on outside of, right, so again, everyone's evaluated, and our expectation is there'll be kind of a toolkit of best practices we're expecting everyone to engage in. And so we're saying tonight, this whole idea of PLC, professional learning community, we want our principals to lead meetings with grade level teachers. I think our days are Wednesdays. I think our days are Wednesdays. And so here comes the fourth grade team, they all come in. We need to make sure there are agendas, there are minutes that help driving those discussions. Chris is having a conversation, he's talking about, hey, we need to identify the problem of practice. We need evidence that those discussions have been led. In many cases, Chris and Anna will be there, but if they're not there, then the principal has to make sure that they have evidence that these meetings are taking place. And then, of course, we're meeting with principals every week, as you heard, but we're also sitting down and having a formal conversation. This is your benchmark data at the beginning of the year. I'm talking about student outcomes now. This is your mid-year data at the midpoint. How has the school moved? And then we'll do the same thing at the end of the year. But in the middle, as the process unfolds, they're going to be providing feedback to principals all throughout the year. And so in the beginning, Anna, Chris might be leading the meeting or co-leading a meeting with teachers. At some point in the year, it should be shoulder to shoulder, and we're kind of really sharing it. Then at some point, there should be some kind of gradual release where only the principal is leading and Anna is only coaching from behind in the background. So those are that's some of the things we're expecting to see at all of our schools. But I do think it's important, and I'm glad you raised this, because we haven't come up with a score sheet outside of the evaluation process on how we're doing. But I think it's important for us to identify schools that need kind of more help with growth than others, and that's something that we'll be working on. And we've certainly identified schools that, in terms of student outcomes, are not as good as we would like them. And so we're working with those schools and differentiating support accordingly. But in some cases, that also means our principals need a little different help, just like our kids and our teachers do. So we make sure we provide differentiated support as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for the presentation. Is it possible we could get emailed to us a better version of page 2 and page 5, please? I've never tried, so, you know.
Yep.
It was in our.
Thank you.
It was in what?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it is in our packet, and it was emailed to us. Was it not in a good quality in the email? Did you see it in the email?
If you could make it smaller too, that'd be awesome.
Small.
Yeah, and this.
We'll send out. We'll send out better.
Some of those numbers could be small. Small.
Like yesterday was professional development. Are principals included in the professional development days?
Yes, they are. Principals are included. Some principals lead, some are learning a particular content area more in depth.
Chris, quickly, can you just share with the board what yesterday looked like? We had a big PD day yesterday.
Yeah.
Kind of the principal's role in that rotation.
So what we did, and I'll speak to the elementary real quick, there were teachers that were learning at various grade levels, their DIBELS data, going over implications for the data, what to do with that, what does that look like in the classroom, or in reading and math with the iReady. iReady is going to be a game changer for the district in both subjects, particularly at the middle school where you have both. Hopefully we get the reading for elementary too. But with respect to your question, the principals were there, A, learning, but B, also facilitating grade level meetings. So in between, after, let's say, grades 2 and 3 go to their DIBELS training, they will then come back and meet with the principal. The principal is then facilitating a discussion on school improvement planning. What does their data look like? What are some high-level strategies we're going to incorporate within the plan? How are we going to monitor? What are our outcomes? What are our goals? So it's twofold. They are participating in the professional learning. They do get professional learning from us as well. But in that realm, yesterday they were two-part learning, but also presented, facilitating discussion around school improvement.
On the previous professional development early release day, when teachers were working with department people. So we had the principals with us, and we were working through and continuing our work with the PLC Plus training process with the principals. So on that day, the teachers went to the department people, and the principals came with us, and we worked for about 2.5 hours through the PLC Plus process.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Chris.
Good night.
This is a copy. Machine.
And so, next goal is goal 3, fiscal responsibility and planning for growth. This one is about Danbury Career Academy staffing, plans, and projections. A couple of board meetings ago, Mr. Spain gave a brief overview of what we were anticipating the cost to be to open up the new Danbury Career Academy. This evening we have some more specifics for you, and Dr. Casimiro and Mr. Spain are going to walk you through those realities.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to try to read off my slides a little bit because I'm also having some of the fonts is a little small and I'm a little self-conscious, Ralph, so I'll make sure that everybody can see the numbers and speaking to them appropriately. So what John and I tried to do is put some detail behind the projected numbers for the cost of the academy, which both includes the high school side as well as the new middle school side, which is much smaller. We'll speak to that in a moment. The first thing I thought was important is to try to ground ourselves in how do you come up with class size numbers for teaching staff. And so this is a general formula that we've used in the past when determining large numbers such as this. Now, granted, it's an imperfect model because all class sizes tend to be a little bit different. They hover in our district at the high school level around 26 is sort of the number that we run. Some of our classes are larger. At the Danbury, at the DCA, in the architectural plans, we've created seating for 24, which is pretty typical, recognizing that we may have 1 or 2 or 3 extra students in those classes to accommodate need. Likewise, there will always be smaller classes for different reasons. Some of our special classes that have a lot of heavy equipment, sometimes run at smaller numbers. So 24 is sort of a general number that we're using for the projection for this model. So just to reiterate, so if you have 1,100 students at the high school side in the new academy, each needing 7 classes, that's 7,700 classes. Divided by 24 students is 321 sections. By teacher contract, they can teach 5 sections, so we've come up with 64 teachers. And so when you minus out the remaining staff left at Danbury High School, at the time that we did this, it was 2,500 students roughly. I think I'm 87 short since the October 1st collection. And you would need approximately 144, 145 teachers, depending on how you run the numbers at 24 or 25. Our classes at Danbury High School run a little bit large. So the first slide in the deck is really the meatiest to unpack, and I'll see if I can do that for you without getting too complicated. So you can see that the regular teaching classes, currently we have 201 core regular teaching classes at Danbury High School. Teachers, I should say. The DCA 2 and the DCA 4, what that means is that's the Danbury Career Academy with the 2 academies, and then DCA 4 is the one with the main campus at our high school. And so you can see that our DCA Academy, by our mathematical formula, would need 64 teachers. We would still need, with the remaining staff, 144 teachers for a total of 208, so a net new of 7 new staff. So we do gain some staff over when we move over to the academy. But we still have to hire approximately 7. I will point out that this is based on this year's projection as an example, but as we move through the next couple of years, Danbury High School will have an additional 400 students total between the 2 campuses, which is 23 or so additional teachers from what you see here. So while the DCA 2 side number will stay fixed because of the capacity in that building, our DHS numbers will continue to grow through 2025, 2026. So we'll be adding more staff than that. So right now, this is really just a projection. If we open the academy today, this is what we think we would need. We are going to cost out the next couple of year over year to kind of get even more of a detailed, accurate picture of the cost moving forward. The teaching remedial PPT, that's really some of our facilitators. These numbers are a little bit easier to digest. We currently have 3. We'll need 1 at the new academy site. 3 must remain at DHS for a total of 1 additional. Same thing with our special education. You can see we'll need at least 3. And again, special education numbers will fluctuate based on the control of the lottery and our students' needs. Same thing with ESL and bilingual students. 3 there. Coaching and counseling, we'll need an additional 5. We're a little short at DHS to begin with, so we really would not be removing any of our counselors out of that main site. We'd be adding 5 over to the new site. Crisis intervention, we would need a new teacher there, 1 SRO. You'll see on the middle school slide that I also have an SRO listed on the middle school side of this. So whether or not we would need 2 would remain to be seen, depending on the makeup of the campus and the accessibility between both buildings. Building where it's walled off, we'll see how that works. Media specialist, you will need 1. School psychologist, we think we can move 1 over and leave 3 at DHS. 2 social work, 1 speech pathologist, and 1 dean additionally. And on the middle school side, the middle school side is all net new. So there are not enough seats per se, not enough teachers and to remove out of the middle school building. So for example, you're taking out only a few students from each grade level, each cluster across the 3 buildings. So it's not quite enough to bring an entire teacher across. So the staffing at the middle school is all net new. The little stars under teaching class regular, it means, has a little meaning behind it. Right now, these are just core classes. We would likely have to add special area classes to this as well. It could be upwards of 6 additional staff there. But we'd like to see if we can get some sort of crossover in special areas between the high school side and the middle school side. So we're still going to continue to look at that. So it could be as few as 2, it could be as many as 6. So we will update that as we begin to work on that a little bit more. Again, you can see the special education numbers there and the remaining numbers that are similar to the high school. So if you have any questions about that slide, I can certainly answer that. Or we can question. Yes.
And notice on both, what is, forgive me, I don't know, what is the dean?
So the dean of student support. So basically the dean will handle kind of low-level behavioral things happening at the high school level, but also really keep track of students who are chronically absent and making sure, touching base, that our kids are coming to school, that they're staying on track. They're looking for students right away, particularly in freshman year. They're very key in grade 9 to making sure students are on track for graduation. And they work directly with the kids and the administration to collaborate on reaching out.
Okay.
Very much needed. They've been a huge help in this last year or so, especially. On the high school administrative side projection, so we will need a campus principal. At the site, as you can see, the associate principal at point 4, point 6, that's actually Dr. Martins, who would shift her support between the 2 buildings and balance her time out. We have 1 athletic director that would remain. We do not have sports on this campus, and the students on the DCA campus are part of our DHS community and will be attending all the regular sports that they enjoy now. Our director of academy partnerships, that's Brett Dean. He will also be sharing time between the 2 sites, as well as working out in the community. And we currently have 5 assistant principals. We would need 2 on the new site. 5 would remain at the main campus for a total net new of 2. And on the middle school side, a little bit simpler, 1 principal. The next couple of slides are really about your support staff. Again, the support staff can vary widely depending on the students that are attending on either campus, and so these numbers can kind of shift between both campuses. They can be a little higher, they can be a little bit lower. So you have a total of 12 support staff between your regular paraprofessionals, ESL, and your special education paraprofessionals. On the middle school side, you'll have a total of about 14, give or take. Some other staff projections on the high school side, so custodial, secretarial, maintenance, nursing, safety advocates. Many of these, you don't remove a secretary from one building to go to another, so you don't exactly gain staffing here. We have a total of 14 across. The star on the cafeteria staff references the fact that that is a program that pays for itself. So we don't technically bankroll those. John, if you want to speak to that a little bit on the cafeteria side of things.
Sure. There's,
School lunch.
well, the school lunch fund is, I call it off-budget, self-sustaining. All of the salaries are paid for either through state reimbursement claims for lunches or for sales of food during the day. So there's no part of the school budget that goes to the school lunch fund.
And on the middle school slide, this may differ, actually it does differ from what's in your packet. I did notice that one of the columns had a formula that totaled some of those areas, so I did correct those. And I will resubmit that for the board so that you have the updated numbers. Just a few different numbers there. So on the custodial side, the school need was 2, the total was 2, new hires would be 2. I believe on your packet you may have 7 because it totaled it from the high school side with a formula. So I apologize for that. Secretary maintenance, and then the other one there on that sheet was, I believe, safety advocates that also held a formula and totaled it from the high school side as well. So that number was dropped down to a total of 13 for this area here. And then I'll have John walk you through sort of the totals. So in aggregate, when you add up the 9-12 personnel, the 6-8 personnel, and then we'll have John talk a little bit about some of the busing, and you can see where we're at with that.
Sure. All of the positions that you've seen are members of bargaining units, so it was relatively straightforward to do the projections. And all of the numbers that we took came from existing union contracts for that year. For the teachers and other certified staff in the NEA, we budgeted at MA Step 6, which we think is a pretty typical amount that we're recruiting people in at. So all the positions are at MA Step 6. The benefits, we took a middle kind of point, which is a combination of employees who might elect single coverage and employees that might take family coverage. We blended those in. And of course, some teachers don't pay Social Security, but other staff members do. So that was pretty easy. We know what the employer share of Social Security is, so we just put that on top. And for the other positions, and that would include the administrators who'd be members of that bargaining unit, the paras, and the support staff. You heard mentioned the secretaries, safety advocate, nurses, things like that. All of those positions we're projecting we'd hire at Step 1. And what Step 1 would be in those years, right to the contract. Same thing with the benefits, a blended rate and applying the FICA as well. So it wasn't hard to do because we're so close, and we have most of those, I think all of those bargaining agreements in place we could use. So that was the staffing as you see out there. The busing, the premise is that the middle school students and the high school students will continue to have separate runs like they have now. We did not, under this scenario, blend in middle schoolers and high schoolers on the same buses. Although you'll see, on the sides of school buses, passenger capacity 65 or 71, that's for elementary school students. For middle schoolers and high schoolers, you can only get two in a seat. You can't get three like you can with elementary. So we based the buses at full capacity, 2 per seat, or about 50 students on each of the full-size school buses. So that wasn't a hard calculation either. We have 1,000 kids, 50 kids on a bus, so that's 20 buses. We have a contract in place with STA where we know we pay price per day per bus. So we just went to the contract to find out what that would be, and multiplied by the 180 days that the school buses are rolling to and from school. So that's the third one. So, in summary, the projections primarily came from contracts with the assumptions that I just described. Questions?
One question about,
Sorry, Lisa.
Is it necessary that we put the middle school with the high school on the same bus? I'm just concerned about a 6th grader on a bus with a 60, high schooler. So is that something that we have to do, or is that just something that we're doing for cost savings?
No, the scenario that I presented separates it.
I'm sorry.
The middle schoolers are on their own buses.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought they were together.
Sorry.
there's only one athletic director that was mentioned.
Yes.
Then why are we building a gym at the mid-career academy?
The athletic director, of course, oversees interscholastic athletics, all the teams and things like that. The gyms, of course, are for phys ed class. That's a mandate for graduation, so many credits in PE.
So we will have a gym at the new site, but the extracurricular activities, if the kids want to participate at the end of the school day, they're going to go back to the campus.
One of the things we talked about with looking at the Nashville model was sort of some of the supplemental materials and programming that we would hope we would aspire to have with our program. How do we think about building that cost in here?
So we have started to do that. There's a few things that you would add in that maybe we wouldn't normally have now. So actually we do have it now, but on a smaller scale. So for example, the CNA, students who take the CNA test. So there's some fees that are associated with that. And there may be some preparatory materials that we give our students. And so we would have that in all of the areas where we offer certification. We would like to try to make sure that we cover the cost of those. That said, though, we are hoping through business and sponsorship. So for example, Nuance is already throwing out there that they want to help us out with that and take care of those fees. So that is likely to grow across with other business partnerships that we have. Similarly, we already have companies that are speaking to equipment and donations that they can help us out with. So things that may be obsolete for them or near obsolete, or perfectly working condition for a student to learn and practice on, kind of first generation equipment as opposed to second generation equipment. So we'll be looking into that. But we are going to be costing out sort of the materials and the budget pieces for each academy. One of the roles when we move to a new leadership model, each academy will have its own little mini budget. And we'll be working over time to establish what that is. We are going to be moving into the most cost-effective way forward as we get started until our partnerships build. can support, sustain some of the extra things that we're hoping to do. But there will be some, some added potentially transportation. I think between, as we work to bring kids out to more places, which is a huge part of this, getting them out to shadow, getting them out to go do some internship experiences, or bringing folks in. So we do anticipate some of that, but we will be building sort of mini budgets for the academy now and some of that is formed by the curriculum development as well. So as you build in learning experiences for the students, and you say part of this learning experience will be an off-site trip to, then you develop the costs associated with that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You go ahead.
The other question I had was more of, an operational thing, as far as costs for running the building, electrical, other services. I don't see any of that here, so I'm just wondering if that's something we're also still developing right now.
Yeah, so I do not have a handle on that aspect of it. But that's something that with the city we'll have to partner with in determining what the cost to run, what were the previous costs to run Cardis at that size with the equipment that's in that building. And how with the new additions and the new upgrades, and I'm not sure what upgrades there are to the air conditioning units and the heating and all of that, but if there were more efficient models put in, that would change sort of the number that we'd be looking at. We definitely gonna have to work with the city to come up with a cost estimate for the operational costs of that building. I think we'll know a little bit more once construction starts.
Yeah, I keep throwing this idea out there because I really would like to see if there's something to bring to fruition, and I'm certainly willing to volunteer to participate in the process of finding out about it and developing it. I would love to see us invest in solar panels for this building. I just think it makes sense to try to limit our future costs, especially as far as utilities are concerned. And given that the federal government is still offering rebates on that kind of installation for putting a brand new roof on this building, I think the timing is excellent to try to pursue something like that. So I'm not involved with the committee that's working on this project, but I definitely would encourage that to be brought forward. And like I said, would be willing to participate in whatever way I could to support that process. Thanks.
Yes.
Any other questions? And this is, remind me, the grades will be phased in, or this is just, we're not
That's all
filling
in. That's all in.
This is all in.
That's all in.
But we're phasing students in, so.
Not necessarily. We need to
Okay.
move kids out of DHS
Okay.
sooner than later. There's a little more flexibility around the middle school side. But the issue with that is that you have to staff that building with a nurse, with a safety advocate, with a principal. So you're not really saving a lot of money to phase that building in as much as you would say at the high school level. But we definitely need to move students out of DHS. When this building opens, we're already going to be 200 students beyond, at least on paper, where we are now, if not more. And then a year later, 400 students. So unless we plan on adding portables to Emory High School, we're already in a series. The cafeteria right now is beyond max now, and so in another year.
We'll be getting another lunch break.
But originally the plan was to phase it in, right? That was originally the plan?
Generally, that wasn't generally decided so much as, the question was, so these are 10th graders coming over. So for example, our CNA program will be housed in this new location.
Mm-hmm.
We have students, that are seniors. That whole program should come over to the new site, where all the equipment will be located, where everything will be housed. So you'll already be taking a sizable number of that academy over to the school. So you'll have 11th and 12th graders there, not just 10th graders. So we are looking to wholesale move students over as soon as possible. We may have to do some negotiation with that, depending on how the budget plays out. But I think that there certainly is a need to get those 1,100 students into that building as soon as possible.
Questions?
So this concludes the superintendent update. There's still a lot of discussions to have around the specifics for the middle school, just in terms of how families will get into the school. As we get closer and closer to the date, certainly we will have some more specifics for families around the selection process for the academies, but we do envision that being part of the student, the way they choose electives now, that will be kind of worked in. So we don't want to signal that this is going to be a lottery in any way for the high school. It will be a selection process, but we still have some work to do on how that's going to be managed. But certainly we want to honor all the kids first, if not first, second choice. Hopefully we don't have to go to the third choice, but the school is preparing for these realities. The middle school conversation, I think, is something we will need to also revisit. Some of our initial thoughts were we would extend the middle school, West Side Middle School lottery to help populate the 300 plus students, and or look at another lottery type model to help populate that space. I think it's going to be important for us to look at any efficiencies we can find. I think the last thing we want to do is one thing to have 365 students in the building. I don't think we want to position ourselves for additional costs with busing, having all the kids all over the system, trying to get to this one building on the west side. So, we can have some opportunities to come back and talk about that as well. But, I mean, these are all exciting things for us. I think the point that I heard tonight was with the middle school model, 365 kids, we're really not finding any efficiencies in that model. Everyone's going to have to be new. The high school, certainly there are some efficiencies to be found because we can pull over a lot of staff from the high school. Certainly there's still some investments to be made, but we can move over a lot of staff to that building. And then last but not least, to the last two questions I just heard from Lauren and Rachel about this idea of kind of transitioning in. I think ideally we would all prefer to be able to wholesale, in a very wholesale way, to move students over so we can populate a building so it's full. And because we already know Danbury High School, Blackwell Bridge is going to be full. But I think what I'm hearing from Kara is we have some programs that would neatly, we can pull students, whether they're in 10th, 11th, or 12th grade, and move them to that building no matter what. But that's only a couple hundred kids. Those are not hundreds and hundreds of kids to fill up seats in the building. So certainly this is going to depend on the budget. But the last thing I think we want to do is have a building of 3,800 still after we've already moved over a couple hundred kids to occupy the campus. So we still have some work to do, but I know the preliminary numbers tonight are a little staggering. When we talk about $12 million, but we thought it's important to get those realities in front of everyone, and then and just kind of having the specifics on what those positions are and how we land on them. So give us something to begin to chew on and see if we can strategize.
So that 12 million is not budgeted in there already?
Yes, sir.
Oh, just checking.
But no, those are all new positions. No.
Plus that $16 million financial crisis income, so on top, that's what we're talking about?
Yes.
It's not
Yes.
30 million, come on.
Yes, separate from, yes.
It's okay.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, John's gonna find it for us, don't worry about it.
Nothing to worry about.
Any other questions before we move on? Did you want to touch upon information?
But not now.
Oh, I would be happy to. So I would like to first thank the Superintendent Evaluation Committee for inviting me into the committee meeting last week. We had an opportunity to go over the proposed goals for my office for the 22-23 school year. Somewhat of a departure from how the goals that were presented years previously. I proposed to the committee that we, as a priority from the strategic plan, to make sure that strategic plan is something that is at the forefront of our work, to make sure that, and also to ensure the alignment of the plan and my goals in a monitoring vote. And given the recent approval of the strategic plan, I proposed to the committee last week that we focus on those 5 priorities identify action steps under each priority to help supervise and evaluate me. And of course, I would be prioritizing those goals. With my team, I also, just so so that the board is aware, I emailed all district staff yesterday, making them aware that you recently approved the strategic plan, and that in the board packet are proposed goals that help to, number one, provide some kind of coherence and alignment in terms of my goals and the plan to ensure that we're moving forward with the strategic plan. But two, there's also some accountability in there as well, making sure we do what we say we're going to do, and then making sure that staff has an opportunity to review those goals as well, so that they also hold us accountable as a district and kind of district leaders as well. So just entry point, if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer and clarify questions they might see.
Gladys, do you have anything to add as the committee chair?
No, I just think it was a good meeting, good information, and I think the board members that came out for the first time began to understand how the process is going to go. And I would just ask board members, when we're trying to put together a committee or have a meeting, we know things come up, but if you could just let the chairperson know or Carol know that you want to be in attendance, I certainly would appreciate it. So, and I want to thank Carol personally for taking time to make sure that she had folders made for everyone. And she did in a very nice and neatly way. So, and I think our next scheduled meeting is sometime in January of 2020.
Thank you.
And thank Mr. Watson, because I think your presentation was awesome. So, thank you.
Any other board updates, committee updates, comments, questions? No. Our next regular meeting is on Monday, Wednesday before Thanksgiving. We've got lots of committee meetings in between. Yes. Oh, yes. Cape Convention.
Are we going to have a carpool?
Show of hands, who's going to the Cape Convention again? Yes. Okay, so we could work that out amongst yourselves. Thank you for representing us. If nothing else, motion to adjourn. Moved by Kate, seconded by Al. All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. We are adjourned.
7:30 in the morning.